First and foremost, welcome back to the NWA.
Thank you. It's good to be back. Anybody that knows me personally knows that I'm a fan of pro wrestling, not sports entertainment. You wouldn't know that based on my career track record probably, but I'm a big fan of professional wrestling, and in the United States, to me, pro wrestling has always been defined by the NWA. You just have to do the research, and that's pretty evident, you know. And so for me, my most favorite time being in this business is when the bell rings, and that's what I think the NWA has always stood for, is guys going out there, working their butts off, and giving them, giving our fans the best in-ring product we can. No divas, no sports entertainment garbage, because that's what it is to me. It's garbage. And to be back in the NWA, it's where I want to be in the United States. So I'm really excited to be back, and also to kick things off this coming weekend again.
Yeah, and you have that big matchup coming May 1st at the Whitesboro High School Gymnasium in Whitesboro, Texas. It's the big triple threat match between you, Chad Thomas, and Dane Griffin for that #1 contendership for the NWA Texas Championship, a championship that was held by Kevin Northcutt, who unfortunately, due to injury, lost the title and hasn't been cleared to come back yet. So fortunately for the Whitesboro, Texas fans, you'll be filling in his spot and showing the Whitesboro fans what Lance Cade is all about. But before we go there, I'd like to talk to you about your beginnings. Anyone who knows Lance Cade knows that you were a protege of Shawn Michaels in the Texas Wrestling Academy, along with Brian Kendrick and the now Daniel Bryan. You spent your early days of professional wrestling there. You trained with Shawn Michaels and Rudy Boy Gonzalez and the aforementioned Bryan and Kendrick. What can you tell us about your early days in the start of pro wrestling and your days at the Shawn Michaels Wrestling Academy?
You hear a lot in this business about how it's all about timing and being in the right place at the right time, and that's exactly what it pretty much boiled down for the three of us. Brian Kendrick was 20, and I'm going to call him Brian Danielson, if that's all right, because I'm not used to Daniel Bryan yet. But me and Brian Danielson were both 18 years old and just graduated high school. The two of them came from Washington, and I came from Nebraska. And the three of us, since we were little kids, this is what we've always wanted to do, was be professional wrestlers. And, unfortunate for Shawn at the time, he had back surgery 5 months previous to us getting to San Antonio in July of 1999. But fortunate for us that we were in the right place at the right time. We were in his first ever full-time class that he had. And, I can't really put it into words what it was like. 18 years old, spending every day of the weekdays, with Shawn Michaels, learning from, at the time, back surgery. Still, and probably still today, he's probably the best in-ring performer there's ever been. And that type of influence, just like I said, with us, from the very beginning, with us, it's always been about bell to bell. And you look at a guy like Shawn, who is so much more than just his in-ring characteristics, his ability to entertain the fans, from the moment he walks through a curtain, whether it's to wrestle or to talk, and during that time till he walks back to the curtain, it's nothing but being entertained. But the most important thing that he taught us and put into our brains is that it's all about the match. And I think that anybody that's seen the three of us get to compete, especially against each other, because it's such a healthy competition between the three of us. It always has been. It's always about giving it our all. And I mean, when we were down here, all of our first matches were in front of 30, 40 people, and then you fast forward 7 years 8 years later, and me and Brian Kendrick are wrestling each other in South Africa for the World Tag Team Championships with WWE. We're on pay-per-views wrestling each other, and and Paul London, trained with Rudy after Sean closed the school down and went back to WWE. But with all of us, we were all taught the same. It's all about the match, and it was just a great time. 18, 19 years old, the year I was down here in San Antonio. At first, me and Brian Danielson got to go to Japan at 18 with Sean. We just had a lot of opportunities, and we worked really hard for him. We worked really hard at the school. It was an extremely difficult school, cardio-wise. But if you watch Sean, he wasn't able to go 62 minutes with Bret Hart at WrestleMania by accident. He's in phenomenal cardio condition, and that's what he taught us also. And he worked our butts off, and I just can't say enough about that year. Those two guys, especially Brian Kendrick, because we spent a lot more time years later together than me and Brian Danielson have. But we're all three very proud of our beginnings and where we ended up and where we are today. So it was all around just an awesome experience, and I don't think I could have wrote it out any better for that first year to be for us.
Absolutely. And, yourself included, it's such a dynamic group that came out of that wrestling academy. Again, we talked about Brian Danielson and what he's accomplished in his 10 years on the independent circuit, between wrestling in New Japan, wrestling in wrestling in NOAH, wrestling in a Ring of Honor, and, even wrestling in the NWA, and then yourself included along with Brian Kendrick, who, all the matches he's had for Ring of Honor and Dragon Gate USA, and in his, I guess now he's in TNA, so, good luck to him on that. But such a dynamic group, and even you mentioned Paul London, who, again, similar paths, wrestled all over the U.S. in the independents, and, made his way in the WWE. Now he's back into the independents. But certainly watching you guys, because I was one of those tape traders back in the day who got to see some of the, the best of Spanky and Shooter Schultz and American Dragon with the mask and the horns, and yourself.
Yep. And
it's pretty amazing to think that you guys all started off at the age of 18, and what you guys were doing then translated into your all of your guys who had careers in the World Wrestling Entertainment. But speaking of the WWE, and I told you I'm not going to get too much into that, but Shawn Michaels' retirement, did you watch that, and what were your feelings on that?
I didn't watch it live. I was in Las Vegas with my wife, enjoying a weekend and not having anything to do with WWE, which was nice. But we had texted each other. Me and Sean did the day before, and I've always kept in really good contact with Sean, since I've left WWE, in 2008, and I knew back then, because, I was in a program with him with Jericho, and I kind of knew then he kind of wanted to wind it down, and it's sad to see someone like him leave, but it's also far more exciting and, like, total thumbs up for being able to leave on his terms, and in the last match, stealing 2 WrestleManias in a row, in addition to all the other ones that, he stole the show on. And it's just,
right.
It was so, to me, I'm a big Ric Flair fan also, but to me, it just seemed a lot more special than when Rick left. Because I really believe, and I don't know if it's because I know Sean personally, but I think that he's sincere, that he is done. God knows he deserves to be done, and because he's worked harder than anybody that's probably ever been there for Vince, and has always stayed loyal to Vince, and
right.
It's I as a fan, because my fast forward button on my DVR remote control is probably broke now from having to watch Raw for the last even 4 years. I mean, even when I was there, it's brutal. I don't think me and Trevor Murdoch ever watched Raw, even our own stuff, just because it was just unbearable at times. But you know, unfortunately, with a guy like Sean not being there no more, the fast forward button, I might have to get a new remote control to fast forward even more, because it's just you know, it's not a destination time slot for me now on Mondays as a fan, to make sure that, you know, I watch what he does, because it's just, he's a guy that, you know, getting trained by him is one thing, but that's where I was luckier than both Brian's, was that I actually am the one who has wrestled him so many times, and it was so it was so different. You know, he trained me, and then, you know, he was retired when he trained us. We never dreamed of ever, you know, we were told when we signed our contracts with WWE when we were all 18, you know, because we signed really young, and the original plan, I think, back then was, and it was talked about, was to bring, you know, the four of us, Shooter Schultz was included in that, was to bring us up through Sean to get that rub. But, you know, Sean was retired and then kind of stepped away from everything until he came back, you know, eventually. But I learned so much more from him on the road than I did at that school for that year, and because it wasn't just going to the wrestling school and the shows here. I had developed, you know, myself over the 7-year period before we, you know, started wrestling each other 3 or 4 nights a weekend and overseas, and you really learn a lot. And I was grateful for the in-ring experiences, but I'm also grateful because a lot of the success that me and Trevor had around right after WrestleMania, Detroit, I think, I don't remember which number that is, but it's, you know, we started that next day into that program with Matt and Jeff Hardy, and all of our success that we achieved during that time, a lot of that credit has to go with Sean, because, you know, Triple H and him are best friends, but, you know, Hunter rides in his, you know, $200,000 bus every weekend, and Sean's in a rental car with me and Murdoch, you know, and so, you know, the 6 hours of driving every day we're doing in between, you know, in between towns, and you know, Sean was with us that whole time, and going to the gym and eating dinner and lunch and all that stuff. So we picked his brain. I mean, we picked his brain apart to learn everything we could, and a lot of Cade and Murdoch's success, especially, you know, that last year we were together, a lot of it has to go to Sean. That credit has to go to Sean, because he was there for us, you know. And I don't think that any guy that has made it to the top, especially in the WWE, hasn't had that one guy that they can go to and has learned from. And I think Triple H is a good example. I mean, hell, 13 years ago Sean gave that to him, and, you know, Sean has helped a lot of guys along that way. And to be one of those guys towards the end, that, you know, Sean made a lot of mistakes along with all the successes that he made, and, you know, he really helped us in avoiding some of them. we didn't avoid all of them, but we avoided some, you know, and I really am grateful that both of us had that opportunity, and Trevor feels the same way.
And, you know, just to kind of lighten the mood a little bit, you always heard about Shawn Michaels kind of being a joker, too. What was one of his best ribs that he ever pulled, either on you or you got to partake in, where he got somebody really good?
Well, I would say that it's funny. It was kind of during that time that me and Trevor just started working Matt and Jeff Hardy. I think one of the best times we ever had with him, from the fun standpoint of it, was we're, you know, one of those 2-week Europe tours. You know, we would do one every fall and every spring. It was we were in Italy in spring of 2007, and they had just brought Santino Marella up, and, you know, he might be Italian, but he certainly isn't he's Canadian, you know, and he rolls into Milan, and we don't know who he is because he was down in OVW or Florida. I don't know where he was at the time, but here he comes in first night and pins Umaga, who's been built as this killer, you know, and you know, I mean, anybody that it's not Santino. If you could have brought anybody into that position, you win that title the first night, you're going to get some ribbon pulled on you, and that was the case. Sean has stepped away from the partying and all that, but Sean partaked in a few drinks that night with us, and it was a lot of fun because I hadn't done that with him since I first came down here and went to Japan with him and all that stuff. So it was just a lot of fun seeing him get riled up too. Because he worked his ass off for his first Intercontinental title, and here's this guy rolling in and wins it night number one, and he gave Santino a good run that night. And I think it was just that same tour. Anybody that knows Crime Time knows that Cade and Murdoch aren't their biggest supporters, but they're causing disturbances like they always do, and someone got him drinking on the Babyface bus, and we didn't know about it, but because we were on the heel bus and traveling somewhere in Germany, so they got the big one really drunk on the plane or on the bus, and they throw up on the bus in the bathroom, and it was because eventually after they gave him enough drinks, Sean gave him a dip, and if you never, I remember being like 15, 16, having my first dip and throwing up without any alcohol in my system. I can only imagine Sean gave the big one a dip and threw up all over the bathroom and the bus, and had to pull over in the middle of Germany at 3 a.m. So he had to clean it because the girls have to. You've been on a big bus. It's half the size of an airplane bathroom. So we had to stop and he had to clean it. and, that little things like that. Sean would partake in, but most of the time was usually just spent with the three of us. Having a good time and. Getting to hear everything, long before Brett came back, we got to hear the real version of all that stuff. Just a lot of stuff, a lot of people didn't, unless you ran with Sean in the 90s and worked with him and worked, and rode up and down the roads with him. Me and Trevor, we got to hear a lot of great stories, and that probably, and second to the in-ring stuff, getting to hear all those stories and travel up and down the road with him was just as fun.
Well, taking this a different direction now, anyone reading any of the wrestling sheets out there or hearing any of your interviews out there, you've been quoted as saying that you want to make it big in Japan. That's kind of your focus now. Now, we both know that the NWA booking is important to you, and you certainly want to showcase your talents out there in Texas. But your fans know that you want to be thriving in Japan, and with your tours taking your primary focus, and you've already had a career with the WWE that sent you all over the world, including Japan, and then like the aforementioned teaming with Bryan Danielson in FMW. And your couple of appearances for Hustle. With this new tour in All Japan, what is your focus? What is your goal? When you get there, what are you hoping to accomplish?
Well, I'm hoping to accomplish what I set out twice to do and was derailed because of WWE. And when I say derailed, it was because I derailed it myself. And when I started with FMW, me and Brian were both 18, and back then, and even to this day, I can't do the things Brian can do from an aerial standpoint, and and certainly not from a technical standpoint. That's just not my style. It never really has been. I usually beat people up and get beat up. There's not really much to it. And being 6'5", 270, being that I am athletic and not like a lot of that type size guys in the WWE. In Japan, I was always and still am able to do things that I can do for a big guy, the athletic stuff that WWE goes, why the hell are you doing that? Well, because I can. I'm athletic enough to do it. Things, for example, that got guys like Shelton Benjamin, who can do anything in this world inside that ring. Sometimes are limited and handcuffed because of the style WWE has, and that's one thing that I've never had over in Japan. I'm free to do what I want, and I experienced that at a young age, and that second tour I went on alone with FMW, and I got to work with a team with Hayabusa every night in the main event. And it was such an encouragement because they were encouraging me to do what I can do, and the style's a lot different. So it was a lot of fun, and it was something that I wanted to keep doing at that time. And sure enough, we had gotten a tryout with WWE, and that's where it took us at the time, because in 2000, WWE was the hottest thing in the world.
Right.
Especially in wrestling, it was just so phenomenal at the time. I mean, we'd have been dumb to pass up that opportunity. But I always wonder what would happen if I would have stayed with FMW during that time, because I couldn't go on the third tour because I had signed the contract with WWE, and the next 3 years in the developmental program, I learned a lot. I met a lot of great people, but I always would have wondered how I would have evolved if I would have stayed over there. And it was always a question that I had because I loved working over there. And then when I got the chance to do it in 2008 again, just with 9 years under my belt, I was 9 years better, and especially, having to work Sean and changing my style around, but still able to do those things I could do at 18, it really opened things up in Japan. And I left out of no other reason other than a financial reason to go back to WWE, only because I had 2 girls. I have 2 daughters. It's not anything that I wanted to do. It was strictly, it was Lance the father making a decision, not Lance the wrestler. And I really regret that part of it. I don't regret the first time going to WWE, but I regret the second time, just because it's not where my heart was at all.
Right.
And this time around, there's a big weight lifted off of me because I don't feel like I need to go back to WWE to fix anything I have done wrong. I don't feel like I need to, mend any fences. This is now me doing what I want to do, working for who I want to work for, and I feel not limited anymore, especially going back to Japan. And I'm pretty sure that when I get there, I'll be teaming with Rene Dupree, who I teamed with the whole year I was in OVW, and me and him teamed a lot while I was in Hustle. So I'm willing to bet that's where we'll go at first. And All Japan's where I've always wanted to work. Anybody that's seen my style evolve over the last 3 or 4 years, I'm a big fan of Stan Hansen, always have been,
right.
And just until recently, last 4 years or so, that I've really started to really watch what he was doing back then. And I'm a big fan of Misawa, always have been, and All Japan was always the place that the Americans, for the most part, that was the company they worked for. And even back 10 years ago, that's where I wanted to get into. I loved working for FMW, but at the time, the way everything was laid out over there, it was kind of like the way it was in America at the time. You had WWE first, and WCW second, and ECW third, and FMW was the ECW. And so my goal was to get to the WWE of Japan, which was All Japan, and that's where. And so it's a perfect situation for me to get to go back this time with the company that I've always wanted to work for over there, and with me being mentally stable, clear, and focused again to get to do what I want to do. So, it's a place that I will be calling home for quite some time, which I'm excited about. The Japanese style is catered to me specifically all the way around, and the fans are so appreciative, and it's just a lot different. Any wrestler that has worked over there and here, I think that as long as you can handle the flying and being gone, for that stretch of time, being in such an odd world compared to maybe what we live, in the States,
right.
It's just a great place to work.
And if you've ever looked at any of the books where people would talk about Andre the Giant being in Japan, or Stan Hansen being in Japan, the larger-than-life guys like yourself, who don't fit, even a typical guy's size, let alone a typical Japanese man size, being in Japan, that's, you certainly get to take its toll on you as well when, you know, the beds aren't necessarily big enough, the doors aren't necessarily wide enough. And you've always
that's the only complaint that I have over there. Is just, I mean, the rooms can get a little cramped. I mean, everything's there, you know, everything's so much smaller over there, and it's so compact, and you know, it's just, I mean, there's like 28 million people that live in Tokyo alone, and that's a lot of people to be smashed into, you know, a little place like that. So, yeah, you're right on that.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because you bring up Stan Hansen, and throughout most of Stan Hansen's career, yes, he did hundreds and hundreds of tours with All Japan, but he also had time to come back and work dates with the AWA or work dates with the local territory. And that kind of seems like what you're looking to do now is work your dates with NWA Southwest in between your time in All Japan. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly the plan going forward. You know, it's just, I don't, unfortunately, the scene in Texas has changed so much, even from when I started down here. It's just, and I almost kind of think that all independent wrestling, for the most part, you know, it's downright gotten ridiculous to a point, you know. I'm a big fan of Ring of Honor. I know Dragon Gate does really well. And there's, you know, a couple places I know out in California that Brian Kendrick works for that do well. And those are, you know, the real places to work. And I think NWA is also, NWA is, you know, the name alone, you know. I mean, it's been around, you know, over 50 years for a reason, and that's exactly why there's not going to be any place I work in Texas except NWA Southwest, because, you know, I believe in the NWA name. Ken Taylor, you know, has everything together, puts everything, all he's got into these shows. And from, you know, when I first spoke with Ken for the first time 2 years ago, and from when I spoke to him earlier today, he is the exact same person in the aspect of his goal is to get the NWA somewhat back to what it was. And in 2010, you know, the chance of it ever being what it used to be, you know, in Ric Flair's day, it's virtually impossible the way everything has evolved, but it can still be a place for guys to work, and that's the main thing. The more places we have to work, the better, and not just for us wrestlers, for the fans, because it gives the fans an option. You know, it gives them a chance to say, I don't like your product, WWE. I don't like your product, TNA. I want to watch these guys. You know, I don't want to watch old guys that you know, or why they're still doing it. If it's for a paycheck, I get it. If any other reason, I don't. And if you don't want to watch WWE's, you know, illogical thinking on 99% of the stuff they do, you have alternatives, you know, and I think that's why Ring of Honor has such a following, the NWA has such a following, and those places are never going to go out of business barring something totally stupid happening with somebody that is running the money, because all those guys, from Bob Trowbridge, the president, to Ken Taylor, Dave Marquez, they all have that passion to still do this and make it right, and that's why, you know, the NWA is where I will work here in the States, because, you know, I made a lot of money in WWE, and I was one miserable bastard. So money doesn't make everybody happy, and to me, I would rather be, at this point in my life, be happy doing this on a different scale than WWE, than do that again, and that's what the NWA gives to me.
Taylor's really excited about this event in Whitesboro, Texas. In fact, I've even got a caller here online. Let me bring him up. Caller, you there? Hello?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
All right. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this, and I certainly will try my best to get out there. It's a little bit of a drive for me. I'm doing my best to get out there, but to ask Lance a question.
Go for it.
I mean, I'll be honest. I kind of dropped WWE before he came on the scene. I have seen some of his matches out there, and I appreciated them. But one of the things I like about the indie scene, which I'm just now kind of getting back into, here is just how hard so many of the wrestlers try. Some of the promoters not as thrilled, but the wrestlers, I mean, these are people that are busting their butts for 40 people. And I was just kind of, now you've been to the big, and you're going to Japan where it's big. I was just really curious as to, what does it mean for you to kind of get back on some of these cards where, maybe it's only 100 people, maybe it's 500 people.
My thoughts on wrestling that kind of show as opposed to a WWE show?
Yes, sir.
What's that?
Yeah, that's his question. What's the difference between
Well, there's a huge difference. I mean, obviously, right from the get-go is kind of what I talked about earlier. Was that if you can't see by the end of the show that everybody out there, because you're going to see, like for instance, you're going to see a lot of guys that might only been wrestling 6 months, a year. And then, like, on the show also is Chaz Taylor, who, him and his dad were wrestling for Sean when I was down here 10, 11 years ago.
Right.
And when I saw Chaz, a year ago, Chaz still has the same passion to do this as he did in 1999. And that is why guys like him, Chaz was wrestling up in Global in Dallas, when I was in middle school. I mean, he's still doing it. He has a passion to do it. I mean, that's huge, and that's what you see at these shows compared to. And I hate to say it, because I've worked the guys. You see that at WWE shows where guys will just go out there and do the same things every night, not attempt to take that risk and fail to try something different. Guys have this pattern of getting up in WWE, and they use the excuse, well, we're working 250, 300 nights a year. Let's just go with what works, and that's just laziness. That's laziness, It's whether the talent in some people's eyes is good on an independent show like at that level. You can make up for lack of talent by your drive and passion, and that's what I like about doing shows, especially for Ken, is he does not put anybody on that show that doesn't want to be there. He's not going to put a name on there, even a big name that doesn't want to do it and be there. And I don't care. The best example of this kind of advice that anybody has given me is from a guy like Arn Anderson, who I've learned a lot from, and he's a guy that if there's a problem, I go to him to get the answer because I know it's got to be right. And he's one of those guys that still has his passion 30 years later to do this. And it's the passion, It's just guys going out there. Arnold, what I was going with Arn's advice, and I've heard him say it 1,000 times to people: the day that you walk through that curtain and you don't feel those butterflies is the day you need to leave, and that's what I like about the NWA, not just NWA Southwest, but when I was doing NWA Hollywood for Dave Marquez, all those guys, top to bottom, they have that passion to do it. Dave Lagana, who's working with Ring of Honor right now, was the head writer on SmackDown. He was working with Dave Marquez out in NWA Hollywood, and here's a guy who has, wrote SmackDown. Okay, I mean that's huge, and still wants to do this because he has that passion for it. So that's what's great, is that you're not just going to see it from the wrestlers. You're not just going to see it from a guy like Ken, who's putting everything into shows like this. You get it from guys like Dave Lagana, who's helped him write the show and all that stuff. So that's the biggest thing, about the show that I like. Those shows, that's what I love the most.
And I think what our caller was asking, and caller, correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't matter whether it's 30,000 people, 10,000 people, or 800 people. You're going to get the same Lance Cade who's going to come out there and basically just bring it right in the NWA Southwest, right?
Exactly, and anybody that's ever done this on all these different types of levels, it's so much harder to excite 40, 50 people than it is to excite 30,000. It's so easy in WWE. It's so easy to go like to Mexico or over in Europe. I mean, you could, do anything, play rock, paper, scissors, and get 30,000 people to go crazy. It's ridiculous. And it shows like this, you've got to work, and that comes down to guys. Do they want it or they don't? Do you want it or you don't? There's no in between, and those guys that want it do very well for themselves, like Bryan Danielson did on the independents, and those guys eventually get to do what they want to do in this business. And like for Bryan, he never wanted to go to WWE. I think he did this time because he realized, we're going to be 30 next year, and that's scary. And then, sometimes, sometimes you have to make a financial decision at the end of the day. So I totally don't knock him for it. So, that's the big thing. The guys that have watched Bryan's the best example because he did so many more independent shows than me and Brian Kedrick did that you're never gonna. I worked Bryan on all those little shows we did in Texas and in Memphis when we were there working for Jerry Lawler. We gave it our all in front of 30 people and doing the dumbest things to excite those people as far as risking our bodies, and
right.
That separates who loves this business and wants to be a wrestler rather than guys like Crime Time who want to play wrestler. That's a huge difference,
Now this NWA Southwest show, the Red River Stampede, is going to feature a lot of talent from all over the Southwest, from NWA affiliates, Panhandle Wrestling Federation, Gulf Coast Championship Wrestling, Lucha Americana, and World of Wrestling. There's what you said kind of rings true. The guys that are going to be on this card, they might not be the biggest names in the business, but they're certainly going to, bust their ass to give these fans, an enjoyable evening, an enjoyable afternoon. And what you were saying earlier about the NWA, how it's not going away, it's part of it is economics. The NWA can afford to put on a show and charge $10 a ticket, and have lesser-known names who are just really willing to go out there and put their bodies on the line. And, you joining that group, of course you lend a little bit of credibility because of your name, but when you go out there and put on the same type of matchup as, say, Chaz Taylor and Spoiler 2000, the fans are really going to appreciate that. And I think, that's where the NWA will continue to thrive, where, if Ring of Honor has a show and the guys half-ass it, they're going to burn out that town. If TNA has a house show and the crew half-asses it, they're going to burn out that town. The NWA has been around for 62 years, and they're not going anywhere. They have different size promotions all across the U.S. and Japan, Korea, Canada, Mexico, Australia, France, not Germany. And it's only been growing in the last 10 years. It's only been growing in the last 2 years. So it's really exciting to see someone on your level, Lance, joining the ranks of the NWA, getting out there and really just putting your heart into the NWA, so that the fans who in this economic crisis, $10 doesn't sound like a lot of money, but a family of 4, family of 5, that's $50-$40. So definitely making sure that those fans get their money's worth, and that's how you keep those fans keep coming back to the NWA, and especially those NWA Southwest shows where, Ken is reporting drawing between 600 and 800 people, and that's in a bad economy in Texas, where, those are big drawing shows in that area. So it's really exciting to hear that. We still have the caller on the line. DK, you're still on the line, right?
I am still on the line.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Not exactly to that, but just to add a little bit to what you were saying here at the end. The indie show here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you know, they draw 100, 125 people. And, you know, some of the shows are really good, but that's, you know, Mr. Cade alluded to it earlier, the scene is just so burnt and there's so many different little indies that it's hard to draw. So when, you know, Ken Taylor goes outside of these big cities and on these road shows, and as Lance said, puts the passion into it that he puts into it, you know, that's why he's able to draw. And for your guest there, Lance, I just want to wish you the best of luck in Japan.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I can see you becoming like next Stan Hansen type star that can be a big crossover between Japan and the U.S. And I'm hoping to see you at the wrestling event. And
great.
I'll get off the line.
One thing I want to add to, you know, what he just says that this is an NWA thing too, and I think Ken, from who I've worked for in NWA, does it the best out of anybody, and I know we feel the exact same way about this. You take a town like San Antonio, for example. When Sean was running the Texas Wrestling Alliance down here, we had a local TV show. It ran, you know, on Saturday nights, and this was before San Antonio had UPN. So on Saturday nights at midnight, you had your option of watching SmackDown on the no, we were on CBS. They were on like Fox. We were on CBS, and WCW Worldwide was on. So you had 3 wrestling shows to watch Saturday night just in San Antonio, and we beat WCW every week from the beginning, and we were neck and neck. We only had a half-hour show. SmackDown was 2 hours, but during our half hour, you know, we were competitive with SmackDown. And when Sean shut that television show down, it took that away from the local guys around here, and what it did was you took this one little great promotion you had here in town that ran, you know, 2 to 3 hour radius of San Antonio. We ran South Texas and down in the valley and all that stuff. And when he shut that down, what it did was it gave these backyard wrestlers, and it gave the guys who went to Sean's, because you know, there's a company down here that one of the guys trained at Sean's, I think, to be a ref, and then when he realized that he won't admit this, but when he realized if you put him on a lie detector, you have to come clean saying that I didn't want this as bad as Lance and both Brian's, or I wasn't willing to work as hard as them. And what this did was then it opened up like 50 little independent promotions around here, which has just ruined this great little town that's 2 million people that love wrestling. They love wrestling here in San Antonio. And things like company, you know, I don't even want to use the word company. Shows like this that get put on, it's just horrible. And I would never, ever, I wouldn't go if it was free. Not just because of the show itself being bad. There's nothing good from, you know, like I can't, like I have kids. So if I want to go to a family run event, which I can do if I go to an NWA event, I wouldn't bring my kids to see any of this train wreck, and I wouldn't. And the shows that don't resort to that, the guys just, they want to do it a little bit. The guys that didn't make it at Sean's school didn't make it not because they weren't good. They did it because they wanted to take maybe 55, 60% of what Sean was saying and 40% of what they thought. And I think that's why the 3 of us succeeded so well, is because we were so young, and I think luckily we weren't dropped on our heads as kids, that we were able to note that, you know, I'm 18, I have no experience at all doing this. Should I try winging this on my own or listening to Shawn Michaels? You know, give me a break. You know, there's no other logical answer than to just listen to a guy like Shawn and go from there. And that's what that's where guys that have went to his school and are still doing shows in front of 50 people and using staple guns and light balls. That's not wrestling. That's a joke. Right. And you're never going to see anything like that on the NWA Southwest. And Ken knows that to avoid places like, the caller said, like Dallas, they've got all these little shows, and they're hit and miss. You might find one great show, but I guarantee you're going to find a lot more bad ones than good ones. And that's the thing about Ken, is it's about quality, not quantity. Ken could run every night of the weekend, and that doesn't mean that it's going to be good. And that's why I like working for him, because it's about quality. And we've had this conversation numerous times that if the guys that still do this, like for instance, guys like Rudy Gonzalez, who does a little bit here. Every time I talk to Rudy, he doesn't want to do shows, because you've got all those leftovers of the last 10 to 20 years that don't want to get along and work to do this the right way. And Ken and the NWA Southwest and the NWA itself does it the right way. That's why they've survived Vince, and they survived times like the economic crisis that's going on. They'll survive.
Now, you brought it up earlier, your time in Hollywood and out here for Dave Marquez's NWA Pro Wrestling. And while you were out here, it certainly seemed like you were coming to a showdown. You and your partner Trevor Murdoch were kind of coming to a head with the Skull Crushers, Rash Brown and Keith Walker, who are still the tag team champions. Simultaneously, while that was going on, it was also reported that Southwest, NWA Southwest, and NWA on Fire in the Northeast, they were looking to hook you and Apollo up for a North American title match. And unfortunately, that match didn't happen because what was reported was there's a family emergency. And a lot of the fans were hoping to see both of those matches take place. In your estimation, down the road, obviously Apollo is no longer the North American champion, the Sheik is, and he's a little bit closer to you now instead of up north. He's just east over in Florida, and the Skull Crushers are still tag team champions. Down the road, do you see maybe you and Murdoch getting back together and pursuing those tag team titles by the Skull Crushers, or down the road do you see yourself challenging the Sheik for his North American championship?
I got to be honest. This is why. The match, I believe, was supposed to take place about a year ago at this time with Trevor and I against the Skull Crushers, and that got derailed because of my commitments in Japan. And this is a lot of the reason also why I didn't go to TNA with Trevor when he went, because the opportunity was there, and I was booked in Japan and could have easily got out of the commitment to go to TNA, and I chose not to do it, not because I didn't want to go to TNA. I chose to not go because there has to be something presented to me and Trevor that we have to do something different. And tag team wrestling, it's been a long time since it was a focus in the WWE, which I hate, because I love tag team wrestling. It's a lot of fun. My best work ever there was, aside from the stuff with Sean, the single matches at the house shows, was all of our stuff we did with Matt and Jeff Hardy. And, I mean, to the point to where, we were semi-main event a lot of nights before John Cena and Randy Orton, and it got to be to where we were getting things so good with Matt and Jeff that Cena went to Arn Anderson and had us moved in the card, so they didn't have to follow us, because John came up to me and said, "We can't follow you guys," and that we took that as a compliment, because and it wasn't just Cade and Murdoch, it was Matt and Jeff were the driving force of it, and we were we were the one heel team that they could work with at the time, that our work grounded us to where Matt and Jeff were extremely comfortable in there with us and allowed us to do what we do, and we allowed them to do what they do, and it was just a perfect match in the tag team situation. And to me, and he's my best friend in this business and probably in life, and he always will be, but to me, I feel like we've sang that song before, and I just don't know that that's something that we want to do as far as go after the tag team championships, because most of my career, I was always a singles wrestler until I went to WWE. Right. And you know, to me, the ultimate success in this business is as a singles wrestler, you know, and that's my main focus right now, which is why I like Japan, because I most of the shows, most of the matches are tag matches, so I get to do that, but I get that every so often to do big matches over there that, you know, are singles matches. I got to, you know, work a whole tour with Akibono and singles matches away from being with Renee, so I get to do both over there. But as far as being here, I definitely wouldn't rule out me and Trevor doing something, but for me, I'd rather go after the Sheik, the North American Championship. The Texas Heavyweight Championship is what's sitting right in front of me right now, and the ultimate goal, which was, you know, the plan a year ago, and that's that the NWA World Heavyweight Championship is going to be brought back to Texas, and it's going to be brought back by me. That is my goal. That's Ken Taylor's goal, and that's not a goal that a lot of people in the NWA want to see happen, but the two of us are going to try our damnedest to make sure that happens. So for me right now, my main focus is the singles, you know, championships and the singles matches.
Well, you certainly, with the victory this Saturday, and certainly put yourself in a good position for, again, an NWA Texas Heavyweight Championship shot. That certainly will put you in alignment for a shot at that North American Championship, and you know, you're playing your cards right and you're following that ladder, certainly will put you in line with Adam Pearce for that World Heavyweight Championship match. But then, you know, there's a long list of great names who are on that list, including the injured Kevin Northcutt. But you know, certainly the fans will dictate it when they want to see it, and you certainly keep moving up the ranks, and you should be in line. But speaking of that championship match coming up, or championship implication match, Ben Gallivan was crowned the champ back in February 26th when Northcutt was injured. The title was declared vacant, and Gallivan defeated a man you're going to be facing in the ring this Saturday, Chad Thomas, to fill that vacancy. And the winner of this three-way, again, May 1st, will be facing the NWA Texas champ in I believe, for Lucha Americana. And I actually had someone email me a message that Chad Thomas had for you. He said he didn't have any other way of getting in contact with you, and well, they wanted you to hear this, so let me just cue this up here.
I've heard it, but I want to hear it again. I want to hear it again.
Taylor decides to.
Here, let's play. Here we go.
Now Ken Taylor decides to put somebody else in the equation, somebody that doesn't quite deserve what I fought for. You think just because you traded in your knee pad from Vince McMahon, you can come to NWA and take what I've deserved? Let me tell you something, Lance Cade. Just because you're a former WWE superstar doesn't mean shit to me. I'm from Amarillo, Texas, and if that isn't getting into each and every one of your skulls, then on May 1st, I will just have to put it there for you, Lance. I hope you're ready, because this ain't WWE.
Some pretty harsh words there from Chad Thomas. What do you think?
Well, he's right on one thing. This isn't the WWE, and that's a good thing. But to have the ignorance to say that I don't deserve to be into this match. Yes, I do believe Kevin Northcutt deserves to be in the match more than I do, but again, it's what I said earlier. It's about being in the right place at the right time. For him to have the ignorance to think that I don't deserve to be in this match is foolish. So I hope that he changes his thinking come Saturday, because he does not want to get into the match and take me lightly, because I've had a lot of time to sit here at home to train. I'm in the best shape of my life, and that's saying something, because I've been in really good shape before, and this is the most physically dominant Lance Cade that there's ever been. And to sit there and say that you don't give a shit about what I've done and who I am, might be a psychological game he's playing with me, but that's a game that he will never ever win. Is trying to get into my mind. I mean, give me a break. I worked for Vince McMahon for 10 years. Nobody's going to get into my mind.
Right.
It's I'm looking forward to Saturday, just because it's going to be a lot of fun. I love wrestling in Texas. It's the best place on earth to wrestle. I don't care where we're at, and he's in for a rude awakening because there's one place in the United States that I won't get booed out of, no matter what I do, and that's in Texas. And that's going to be the case Saturday. And usually Lance Cade doesn't have the fans behind him generally, but I guarantee you that will be the case Saturday, and that motivates me beyond belief. I've had a lot of time to heal a lot of injuries, and to mentally prepare for what I'm about to this second journey of my career. So I'm not going to knock him. I'm not going to get into what he wants, and I'm not going to play his game, but he's in for a rude awakening come Saturday, because I pulled out I ain't bringing the wrestling boots. I'm bringing the cowboy boots, and that ain't good for him.
Well, I appreciate your time today, Lance. I want to put out there, you can follow Lance Cade on Twitter at Lance Cade SATX. That's Lance Cade SATX. Also, you can check out NWA Southwest by going to www.nwa-southwest.com, or you can check out their MySpace page, myspace.com/NWA Southwest. Lance, you got a big match ahead of you on May 1st, and we're wishing you nothing but the best. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks again, everybody. That was Lance Cade. Terrific superstar, making All Japan his home, and NWA Texas, NWA Southwest his home. He's pursuing that Texas Heavyweight Championship, and that's going to do it for our show. So for everyone listening, thanks again. Again, the big show is going to be for the May 1st at Whitesboro High School, in the gymnasium at Whitesboro High School in Whitesboro, Texas. And that's going to be Lance Cade taking on Chad Thomas and Dane Griffin in that triple threat match. You need to go out there, check it out. Also, the another guest that I had earlier this month, Rudy Russo, he's going to be defending his NWA Junior Texas Championship against Gabe the Babe, who, again, is a former NWA Junior Texas champion. They're going to have a triple threat match for the ladies, and they're also the NWA Texas Tag Team Champions. The Texas Heartthrobs are going to be taking on Pretty Flawless, and then also the two former NWA Texas champions, Chaz Taylor taking on Spoiler 2000. Again, all that for $10. If you guys are in the Texas area, in near Whitesboro, make sure you go out to that event. Again, support your NWA, support NWA Wrestling. And you can check us out on Facebook. Just search for Alliance-Wrestling. You know the website by now. It's www.alliance-wrestling.com. Or you can follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/theallianceblog. Hey, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.